Thomas. He is God. I still believe God is still with us. The love of Jesus is wonderful.
How I came to foster Keke was when I started with this ministry. We'd seen her and, in fact, found her one night dead drunk. We actually thought she was dead. And it was because it was a bitter, bitter cold winter's night. And the only way for the family to have coped with her crying, being cold, was to give her liquor, the local beer. And the doctor with us that night actually thought she was dead, but felt a faint pulse. And I was young then and always prayed, and I said, if I have children one day, I'll call my daughter Keke, and I'll tell her the story of this little girl who had to live on the streets, and not knowing that one day I will actually be the one who's going to look after her. But because one has to be over 25 to foster, and so after 25, I started to really seriously consider it, and after about 3 years, it just happened that I fostered her. The dangers were too obvious. And she grew up with a grandmother because the mother was never on the scene. And so it was an absolute necessity that she was removed. The family used her as a source of income to survive. People would see there's a child with hungry eyes, and people would give money. And so that's how they would buy of course, probably their booze as well, but food as well.
Flowers.
Flowers, and who are we going to give the flowers to? Then they disappeared because the threat got too strong. You know how they're going to cope. The very concerns that the powerful will come and remove the child. It's just understanding the lifestyle of the poor or in these communities, and I'm speaking really from my experience. And then there was a time that they've also disappeared when we worked out things and just learned that the child was in prison with the grandmother because the grandmother was arrested for drinking in public. And that's just another danger of the poor being on the streets. They're the targets. So this child spent, at the age of 2, with a grandmother, 3 months in prison. And then just journeying with that community. You can't just go in there and change, but if you build relationship, you earn respect at the end of the day. So at the age of 5, I sort of encouraged them for preschool. And eventually they understood, and the child went to preschool. So it's like small steps of encouraging another lifestyle, something that they didn't receive, to give to their children. And they often want that for their children.
Something better that you don't know.
She sees her mother, she sees her grandmother, she has a great-grandmother in Soweto, and an uncle and an aunt. She's very fond of her grandfather. School holidays, she would come out with us on our night runs and she would spend time with them. Weekends, we make contact. So I think it was important for me that she must have contact because she had a history. It's not that she was abandoned. It was just that she was in that circumstances and we realized that it was just not safe.
Michael.
I'm not sure if she's been sexually abused. When she was at school, the teachers again observed. We noticed all the sores around her mouth, and we actually thought it was herpes. We did take her for an examination. They didn't find anything. She went for some therapy, but they're not quite sure. They were probably attempts. They do some screening, but I think it's easy because of the needs that are there. And I think we need to make the public more aware that that's an option to look after all the children that are hurting, that needs help. And of course, again, that it needs to be done so sensitively, not just because they're the poor, therefore they must be exploited and the power will come in because these people have real fears. There is a saying, why does the poor always have children if they know they can't even afford living like that? But the children are the ones who give so much meaning. There are lots of dangers. I think the first danger is just the abuse, basically being homeless and having to grow up in such circumstances because they're in a lot of adult company. The other danger is the environment. There are no safe playing space. There's constant traffic, and every time when one goes and visits, you sort of like just grieve deeply, just thinking when a child will get hit, run over there. There's the other danger of course, the physical sexual abuse. One can't say exactly whether it's happening, but certainly these kids are more vulnerable because of being so exposed. Grace is in the community of Vrededorp. She stays there with 3 children, a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old girls, and then the 4.5-year-old boy, and also with a common-law husband.
It's a beetje hard, baie hard ook, om ma en huisvrou te wees in so 'n plek. Dan is dit ons het nie water nie. Jy sukkel meestal met water. Jy sukkel met die toilets, om jou kinders skoon te hê. Jy sukkel met houden en alles om vuur te maak, om die kinders warm te hê in die huis. Meeste van die tyd is dit maar net lawaai en bakleierery hier rond, maar ek werk nie, man werk nie. Ons sukkel maar om in 'n lewe te kom.
Dis nie veilig nie.
Nee, jy moet altyd kyk waar jou kinders is, want dis meisiekinders.
Ja.
En jou babatjie, jy is ook 'n seun, jy moet kyk waar jou kinders is.
Ja.
And this year we've began a 3-year commitment to sponsor 10 homeless children a year for the next 3 years. And the aim of it is to take the children out of the kind of environment they're in that isn't a particularly stimulating environment as far as their development's concerned. To take them out of that and to put them in an educationally stimulating environment at the earliest age possible. So for us, that's 3 years old. It's thought that in terms of the development of general intelligence, about 50% of that development happens between conception and age 4, another 30% between age 4 and age 8, and another 20% between age 8 and age 17. For most children, preschool is a good thing, and it's something that makes sure that optimum development can happen. In terms of children in particularly deprived situations, then it's absolutely vital.
Ek is bly daaroor as my kinders in die skool is. So ek voel dis iets baie goed wat aan my gebeur het, aan my seentjie. As uit die straat uit, hy kry alles ordentlik daar. Hy kry tale wat ek nie met hom praat nie. Kom hy huis toe en sê, "Hi mommy, how are you? How was your day?" Dat maak my bly sien. Ek voel baie gelukkig. Ek is gelukkig daaroor.
Tavo is from a community in Vrededorp, and he's a child whose mother seems to be quite responsible, very interested in the parenting education things that we offer at the school, and seemingly trying to give Tavo the best that she can in her difficult situation. And he is a child who has just blossomed in terms of his self-confidence, in terms of his display of affection, in terms of his interaction with the other children.
There was a time that another little boy in that community disappeared, because there are people who are wandering around and one never knows who is the person who are looking for children. So that's really a number one danger.
Dis mense wat kinders vat en gaan slag en partytaal vir daai goeters. En dis nou die enigste kind wat ek nou baie mooi meer oppas. Maar hy luister nou as jy vir hom sê, as die mense vir jou sweets roep en sê jy sweets, hy man gaan jou slag, jy moet nie gaan nie. As hy na jou hoekie toe roep en daar's nie mense nie, sê vir hom jy soek nie jou sweets nie. Ek sal vir jou koop as daar geld is. So my kind ry terug by die hoek.
Florence, that is Lucky's mother, it's a completely different situation. I think she has basically given up.
Ek het gebly, maar nie so lekker. Ek kyk net my lewe en dan
She is an alcoholic parent, and from knowing her over the years, I think something happened in her life that caused her to be so negligent or had given up hope, because she was the mother who used to take care of her children, of her child, more than all the other women.
Ek wil die werk kry, nou ek sukkel met die kind. Ek moet try om ek moet die werk kry.
Lucky is a child we're quite concerned about. Of all the children we have here from homeless communities, he's the one who is most obviously neglected. We'd also heard stories that he'd been given mbamba to drink in the community. When we spoke to the mother, when she sometimes came to fetch the children, the teachers would often speak to her and she would listen and, and nod, and nothing improved. And we eventually worked through Judy of Pabaliyabatu, and she went to see the mother and found a very difficult home situation where there is abuse, where there is alcohol abuse as well as people abuse. He often doesn't come to school, which is a fundamental problem. When he does come, he can be very aggressive. He doesn't relate well to the other children, doesn't relate well to the other teachers. And so he was causing us great concern.
So is die tyd toe Lucky weggeraak het?
Ja,
Onthou jy daai tyd?
Ek weet nie. Ja.
Hoe was dit vir jou gewees?
Nee, die kinderen was net gespeeld en toen hij raak, moet die kinders, toen ik zie die andere kinders, ik vraag, was like jullie zeggen, nee, ons was net aan man. So.
I personally journeyed with Lucky because he was a boy who disappeared. And I just remember the time of agony because they were the children with whom we've had a relationship with. And he was just such a gentle child. But after that experience, he's become extremely violent. And one day she just said to me, Judy, I think it's time. And so I knew that she'd given it much thought, that it's just not going to be a brutal takeaway, which can often happen. The system does that, not acknowledging the feelings of the poor. But also kind of like just with the trust that if the child is being removed, the child will have regular contact. Grace, met jou twee grootdogters, Maria en Stella. Jy as 'n moeder, is jy nie soms bekommerd oor die gevare waaroor hulle is? Daar is verkrachting, seksuele...
Dis eintlik die dinge wat ek oor eintlik worry. Die grootste probleme wat my eintlik het, is my twee meisiekinders.
Ja.
Ek kan sê ek is in 'n huis. Ek weet nie wat gaan buite kan anders nie. Nou en dan kyk ek maar weer uit.
Ja.
Na my kinders. Ek is nie veilig met my kinders hier so nie. Eintlik het ek al getry om te kyk of ek 'n boarding school, maar toe vat ek myself. Ek het nie geld, hoe gaan ek 'n boarding school betaal vir my kinders? Ek kan nie.
En praat jy met hulle oor die gevare soos verkrachting en seksuele molestasie?
Baie.
Jy praat met hulle?
Baie. Ek het 'n dag vir hulle wat ek mee sit, as ek sien ons is alleen in die huis. En wys ek hulle wat gebeur en hoe gebeur het, geld gee hy. En dis goed wat ek like nie. Nou, hulle verstaan my. Een roep jou, hy sê vir jou, gaan gou vir my winkel toe, hy gee jou geld. Gaan jy van winkel toe, kom jy terug, hy gee jou geld. Môre doen hy dit weer. En dis 'n mansmens daar. Hy trek jou nader na hom toe. Moet dit nie doen nie.
She's a sensible woman. She discussed these issues with the girls, and they've been sharing and talking about how they need to take care of their bodies and that it's theirs and belongs to nobody else, etc. The mother's not always going to be there to protect the children, so they are vulnerable. They need to be in a place where they're more protected.
At the moment, we are having 27,000 plus people living in Diepsloot. Actually, we are expecting more coming from Alexander East Bank. So there's a lot of overcrowding. There's a lot of alcoholism. We've got physical abuse of children. Some parents, taking out their anger to children. We've got a lot of sexual abuse. And neglect as well, children who, some of them because of the circumstances that parents are working far, they leave the children alone, and you find that children are neglected, loitering around in the streets. We have children who report cases of rape, that they have been raped by a neighbor or an uncle. For instance, we had a case where children who were being molested by the traditional healer, that the auntie sort of made an agreement with the traditional healer that he can, have sessions of abuse with the children whilst giving her the money to buy food. So another scenario that we have common here is of parents who actually encourage their children to get involved with somebody so that that person can take care of the family.
some of them are young prostitutes, so we are taking them out of that situation and trying to teach them crafts so they can learn business skills. We'll send them on a small business course so that they've got some hope of getting out of the situation, because giving them psychological help and letting them go back to the situation isn't the answer. We've got to show them a way out of the situation. Well, Jane and her sister have become prostitutes because the father is a drunkard. Their mother has run away because she's been so badly beaten and abused that she can't take it anymore. She's living in the veld near Ferreira's. So Jane took it on herself to start prostitution to feed her young brother at home. Her sister has a 4-month-old baby. There's just no money coming in. They need school fees, so they're doing it for school fees. She says, if we don't get educated, we'll have to do this forever. So they actually came to me at the school and said, please help us. We don't know how to get out of the trap that we're in. Perhaps Jane and her sister and 2 other girls in the community can start a small business, like a home industry, where one girl is making tracksuits, one is making cakes, one is making biscuits, one's going to do sweet making, one will make sandals, one will make handbags. And the community will benefit. We'll make things that they need so that they can sell it internally in a little spaza shop. How you doing, Amanda? Amanda's mother died when she was 3 months old and her father disappeared. And her mother's sister has taken her in, and she doesn't particularly want the child. Amanda is frequently not at school on Mondays or Tuesdays. She's got whip marks and nail marks. She's terrified out of her life to go home, but she says she hasn't got any other home. Frequently she's thrown out of the shack where she has to sleep wherever. So she's only 11. By the time she's 13, she'll probably end up in prostitution if we don't do something about it right now. Let's move your box to there. Julia was raped twice. She told me twice. She said once the man wasn't very rough, but the other man who raped her was very, very rough, and she was quite injured and damaged. She says she's very happy that the man went to jail, but she's terrified of him coming out because they're not serving long sentences. And she says he'll find her because he told her if she told, he would kill her.
That's better, Amanda. Can you see now?
We estimate at the moment of cases that we know, there are 31 children at Diepsloot who are in mortal danger. We are desperate for a place of safety for them. If we had a place of safety, these little ones would have a safe home.
We are in a stage where we are saying perhaps we need to have community-based treatment for children, where we don't isolate children from the communities where they have been raised, because now institutionalization also is not an answer. So I would say it's best if we develop places of safety within communities.
Stepfathers, mothers' boyfriends are primary culprits of the problem. They feel the woman belongs to them and so do the daughters. And it's frequently them that are the rapists and abusers of these little ones.
Usually, because of type of these offenses, it happened behind closed doors. You'll find that the suspects are people who are well known to these children, especially those the children trust and love most. Like, for instance, stepfather, and biological fathers, uncles, neighbors, and even friends of the family. A person whom a child cannot be afraid to get into his bedroom with.
I think also poverty plays a part there. There's just one shack where they have to share the bedroom, everybody, the mother, the father, or the stepfather, and all the children. And then the children are exposed to sexual behavior of the adults. They see these things. Some of the children, they report, they see these things. And then it becomes easier for adults to abuse them, because now they know, even if they haven't experienced it, they know such things. And if maybe the stepfather was in the same room, when the mother is not there, they take over the children and abuse them.
From our research figures, 1 in 3 children is sexually abused in this country, and it's unacceptable.
Most houses in Ivory Park are being owned by single mothers, and those women are trying to raise their children on their own, and most of them, they stay with their boyfriends, and then that boyfriends start abusing their kids. And
They don't speak up because they are so much dependent on their partners. Physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional and neglect, those are the cases that I see in Ivory Park, all of them.
No!
When I start talking to kids, you can see that something is happening to them, but they just cannot start speaking about it because you are so much dependent on your father, who's sort of a breadwinner, and he's doing so much for you. So, I mean, you cannot talk about somebody who you love and somebody who's always there for you and telling people that he's doing all these funny things to you. It's very much difficult. So what I'm saying to them is, it's okay. You can speak about it. Even if he threatens you or doing anything, it's wrong. You know, giving them all the symptoms and what child abuse is. When I come to the mothers, I tell them that it is happening, you know. Their partners may be abusing their kids and they mustn't be, sometimes they are not aware of that. And it is happening. And I just tell them how subtle it is. Sometimes they might not be able to see it because, you know, they trust their boyfriend and they love their boyfriend. And most of the time they are so much dependent on their boyfriend and they cannot talk about it. Unless that mother is very much prepared to go to the police station and report it and stay away from that boyfriend, it can be solved. But in most cases, they don't. They rather keep quiet and pretend as if it's not happening. And in most cases, we find their children going around becoming street kids or maybe sometimes keeping quiet with it and dying in silence.
The difficulties that we have, it again goes back to the mothers of these abused children. In most cases, after the case has been reported, investigation is continuing properly. We have enough evidence against the perpetrator. The case are withdrawn. And that put us back to zero, as if we have done nothing. The men go free.
There's no specific patterns if we look at the different crimes. Different population groups, the socio-economical groups, the ages. It occurs all over the spectrum.
The worst thing was a father took his own 18-month-old daughter and the child was actually sleeping. He woke her up, put her onto a stove, all 4 plates were red hot, and he kept her there and he burned her buttocks. And that was one of my really sad and shocking case about it.
How can you rape? The youngest child that I know was 6 weeks old.
At least 95% of perpetrators of sexual abuse are male. And what one wonders what the ethos in our community and our society is all about that gives men the right to abuse women or abuse children.
I wish you could say castrate them. I really don't know. Some mothers are so angry at this. Our men really, can you educate them? You know what? To shake their brains, their minds, that these are their children, really. And they should not destroy their future. The men need to take an active role in this, really. If men can take part in this, maybe it could work to help to prevent, because they are the major perpetrators.
People have got fears and anger that they are taking out on innocent or at-risk groups. For instance, there's also a problem of wife battering, you know. So my fear is even the small children, our future men, are being exposed to these things. They see an uncle or a father abusing either a child or a mother, and then they grow with this belief that this is what a man is supposed to do. So there are a lot of actions that need to be taken from that age so that they shouldn't continue with this cycle of abuse.
We're going to have a very damaged nation of women in the next generation if we don't do something right now. And if you have a son, just imagine, your son has a 1 out of 3 chance of marrying an abused woman, and he may never see the outward signs. So when they have psychological problems later in their marriage, it all goes back to that because it's never been dealt with.
As far as the community is concerned, they must all get involved. There are in many cases where you find that People see what is going on next door, but they don't want to report it because they don't want to get involved. Not knowing that if they can give that information either to the police or the social worker, the matter will be investigated without their identity being established.
So whenever they stumble across a child that is abused in any way whatsoever, they must report it. It's very important to break this cycle of abuse.
Women need to be educated about what their rights are, as well as children, that they do not have to remain in marriages where they have an abusive spouse. Children need to know that they don't have to accept everything an adult says or accept harsh physical abuse or sexual abuse because their father possibly is the head of the household. And children also need to be taught that not everything an adult says is right. And 80% of child abuse cases or sexual abuse occur with somebody that the child knows.
It means that adults can also abuse that authority. The child will not feel able to question that adult's authority. And that's how sexual abuse happens. That's how other forms of abuse happen. Because the child actually thinks that the adult is an authority and trusts that the adult knows what is right for the child. Okay.
It's just such a gift to have this little person and to nurture this person. Being a single woman, I think it's even harder, but I've got a good support group. She's at grade 1 at a school, and then after school she goes to an aftercare center. When I fetch her in the afternoons, we try to spend undivided quality time together. I think each individual child will cope with it differently. Keke copes remarkably well. So I take one day at a time, and I don't know what the future holds. I'm committed to her for now, and will give her the best I can. I would hope her mother will have that opportunity to take this responsibility for her own child. But for now, she's definitely not in that situation, which makes it so painful that I, as another woman, has to look after her child.
Please, I beg you. I beg you.
Julie, which one are you using? Oh, so we just... Oh, which one is this? You know what? I measured it with that hole, but that... You see that hole there?